The views, information, and opinions expressed during the following program are solely those of the individuals involved and do not necessarily represent the views of Access Communications, its representatives, or its employees.
Welcome to Planting Seeds, Philanthropy in Saskatchewan, a show where we aim to connect you to the community impact being powered by donors and charities across the prairies. I'm your host, Victor, with the South Sask Community Foundation, and I hope you enjoy the show. I'm happy to welcome Shawn Bauche to the show today. Shawn's actually a program consultant with Creative Kids Saskatchewan, and we're here today to talk a bit about giving kids a creative chance. And Shawn will go into details really about what that means. Before we get into it too, I just wanted to acknowledge, Creative Kids is an organization that the South Saskatchewan Community Foundation sees a lot of donors giving funding to throughout the years. And without going through an extensive list, just some of the most recent grants, for example, is the Moffat Family Fund has recently given $15,000 towards Moose Jaw activities for creative kids. We've also seen the Lauren and Evelyn Johnson Foundation give $15,000 recently, as well as the G. Murray and Edna Forbes Foundation. Those are just a few of the grant programs that organizations often apply to, and there's a lot more. When I was looking in the back end, I was actually pretty impressed at how many people through our organization choose to fund creative kids. And with that, it was a pretty easy reason for me to reach out and say, hey, we'd love to hear more about your story. We know it's something that resonates with people, and we'd love to hear more. So without further ado, thanks for joining me, Shawn. Is there anything you'd like to let, the audience know about yourself, your role at the organization?
Sure, yeah. Like you said, I'm the program consultant there. So I've been with Creative Kids for about 12 years, give or take. And I sort of work on the application side. So I'm kind of more involved with speaking with the applicants who are applying to the program and working with the instructors that we work with and stuff. So
great.
I can tell you lots about that.
So you mentioned the applicants. So maybe I'll ask you to step back a bit, and can you let the audience know, what is Creative Kids? What's its purpose? What does it do?
Yeah, so Creative Kids, basically our goal is to help kids achieve their full potential through access to life-changing artistic and cultural activities. So that's kind of like the overarching piece. And the way that we do that is we offer funding for families with financial barriers that wouldn't be able to participate in, or for children actually, who wouldn't be able to participate in artistic and cultural activities. They can apply to us, and we hopefully are able to help them by paying for, say, music lessons, dance classes, theater, workshops, cultural activities and musical activities on their behalf, essentially. So it's really about creating access and opportunity for kids that might not have that chance, really. Yeah. So, and we're province-wide. Yeah. We started in 2010 was our first grant that we gave out, and since then we've helped at least one child in 251 communities across the province, and we've granted in May, this past May, we granted our $6 millionth dollar.
Oh wow!
And we've helped 13,000 kids access almost anything they want to access that's creative or cultural or artistic. Yeah,
that's great.
So it's been really fantastic.
I'm pretty familiar with, for example, kids sport, and kids sport kind of, in a way, does a similar thing, but for sports equipment. Would that be a fair comparison, or?
Yeah, actually, when we first started, somebody approached Sask Culture and said, "Hey, can you make kids sports pretty cool? Can you make something similar for?" Is it feasible to make something similar for the cultural sector?
Yeah.
And so in our early days, we actually we were good friends with the people who with Sask Sport, who runs the kids sport program. So we actually we're in lots of conversations with them early days to see kind of how they did things, how we might do things and that kind of thing. And I just mentioned Sask Culture, which I realize people might not know the connection there, but
Yes.
Sask Culture administers the Creative Kids program. So Creative Kids is a separate charity, but because Sask Culture provides the administration for it, one of the really neat perks is that any donors or sponsorships or foundational grants, like the ones through the South Sask Community Foundation, 100% of that goes to helping pay for those activities, helping the kids, kind of thing. So it's 100%, which is it's rare to see that, and it's really cool to be a part of that.
Well, it's nice to have those those tangible things that you can give, these families that clearly can benefit from it. And just kind of on the note of benefits, what kind of outcomes do you maybe see or anticipate happening with kids as a result of being able to access these arts and culture programs that they otherwise may not be able to?
Yeah, I think, I can speak to, I can give you really specific stuff, or just generally right now, is I think a lot of, mental health, for instance, has been a really big topic lately. It probably always has been, but it seems to have come to light more, maybe during COVID or even before. There are 55,000 children in poverty right now, unfortunately, in Saskatchewan. And, when we kind of created this program, it was kind of we want to be sure that every child has a chance to have that sense of belonging, or that sense of mentorship or self-esteem or confidence, because it plays in so many, it might sort of, just be art or just be dance or something like that. But the confidence and the skills and the friendships and all that stuff that comes out of that has been shown to be very impactful. It's been really, and so it's kind of a really important piece, actually, that we're finding out. Yeah.
Just to add my own piece, one of the things that through the G. Murray and Anna Forbes Foundation Fund, sometimes our foundation will give greetings at it's called Do It With Class. It's another charity here. Specifically, one of the arts organizations actually teaching kids how to do theater performance and musical theater. And just a little bit of a personal story of just how I've witnessed firsthand just that little spark that can happen through organizations like this is my son Roberto, and for full context, Shawn actually knows my son. Shawn and I are both from Weyburn, and our families know each other. So he's met my son before. But my son Roberto, when he was 4 years old, we were at the Southland Mall in Regina, and Do It With Class had a little workshop set up, and he was too young to partake, but they still invited him in. Kind of the short of it is it took him a long time, but he got the courage to go in and try it out. And after that, all that kid wanted to do is dance. All that kid wanted to do is act. And he's never stopped talking about it since. He's taken dance classes since, and we don't have the financial barrier, so he's lucky that if we want to get him into something, we generally can. But it's he's in theater classes for the summer. He's been in a dance class for a full year, and you can just see that spark, that little bit of meaning that gives to him, and that joy that gives to him. But then also, as you mentioned, these arts programs, for example, dance, not just him, but a lot of kids, you've got these 5-year-old kids, whatever age, showing up to their first dance class in the fall. Some of them are grasping onto their parents, won't let go, don't want to go in. You fast forward to the end of the season, and suddenly these kids are giving a performance on stage to over 1,000 people, and they're comfortable and they're loving it. And those are skills that are invaluable. I think sometimes when people think of the arts, they might think of the nice to haves, but it really is. Those are there's really strong, lifelong, important, essential skills that are learned through the arts that are so beneficial in so many ways.
Yeah. I may just step back a bit and just kind of explain a little bit more about what we do, and then I've got a couple other sort of stories. It's very similar, just so people listening know a little bit more. We work with about over 500 instructors, service providers, basically across the province. So when people apply to Creative Kids, they can choose, the family can choose anybody basically in their neighborhood who is offering these programs. So it can be like, it might be a piano teacher teaching out of their home, but it can also be, it might be, like you said, it might be like a number of we work with a number of studios. We work with, there are people offering like Indigenous beading, regalia making. It can be like art classes at, say, the Neil Bockwell Center, or and we also, and so it can be like big organizations, it can be nonprofits, it can be individuals. We ask for criminal record checks and stuff from each of them to ensure that the kids are working in a safe space, and then they can sort of have that positive experience there. And so so we work with a number of them across the province, and we're discovering new ones all the time. So families can kind of see, who's already on our list, but they can also, if they know somebody who has just maybe moved into the community who is offering like stained glass making or creative writing, or like there's just so many different creative things. And so the family gets to pick which of those is going to sort of resonate best with with their children or youth. And then they can apply to us and for up to $750, and then we take those applications, and we sort of have a number of volunteers in various communities that sort of look over the applications and make the decisions, basically, and are a bit of like a community resource. And then we sort of pay the service provider directly, so the family's not involved in any of that kind of stuff. But yeah, whatever. And if the kids decide like they want to try something, like Roberto maybe, and it's like, you want to try this and it doesn't quite fit, they're not necessarily stuck to that. They can be like, okay, I did this summer, there was like a dance camp or something, but really now so-and-so really saw a banjo the other day, wants to learn how to play the banjo, or whatever that looks like. We're pretty flexible about that too, because kids are kids, and learning and that kind of stuff is kind of, well, it's all great. So we'll help however we can if we're able.
Before you actually get to the stories, I wanted to ask one thing, because you mentioned, there's like hundreds of different service providers essentially. Is there like a simple way that people can see all of the ones that they can apply for through SaskCulture, I guess?
Yeah, so the Creative Kids website there's a service provider link, and if you go there, there's actually a map. And so you can kind of go there and like zoom in on, if you live in Rostern, you'll see what's in Rostern, for instance, or I guess like Weyburn or Estevan or Swift Current or any of those places. It'll have who we currently work with, but we're also open to new. We don't know everybody. We're totally open to new. So people can kind of use that as a base, but then also potentially say like, hey, this is a teacher that we were interested in. Do you guys work with them, sort of thing? So what is the website address, just to make sure people have it too? Oh, of course. It's creativekidsask.ca. Awesome. And there's also, that's where you get, say, application forms. There's application deadlines that are listed there. There's also other story, like we share a lot of stories on there, but as far as applying goes, that's where you do it. And then there's also obviously like donation links and things like that too as well. Great. Yeah. Sorry, I kind of cut you off, but I thought that was important, just to make sure. I want to make sure if people know how to get there. Absolutely. But speaking of stories, I think you were going to talk to a couple stories. Is that right? Yeah. There's a couple that are really cool. Like, so since we began in 2010, we've had a number of people who have been kind of going through Creative Kids or accessing it several years in a row, and are now adults. And so instead of sort of like the speculation of early years, like we think this is going to make a difference, now we're hearing from, for instance, like we have a volunteer, Emily, who she was a Creative Kids. She danced for 6 or 7 years. And she sort of reached out to us, and she said that it was, she credits Creative Kids and dance for how, what she's been up to. And she does things like she's a youth support worker. She is a podcast team member for a Mood and Disorders Society of Canada. She's on the Youth Advisory Committee for Libraries and Archives of Canada. She is almost on a kinesiology degree. And she just says that, and she's going into law, and she says all of that was from the confidence that she got from dancing.
That's awesome.
Like literally everything. I wouldn't mind just reading this. I've got like kind of a quote from her actually.
Absolutely.
So what Emily said is that what she learned through dance basically was that my experience and voice are important. It also helped me meet amazing lifelong friends and dance mentors. It sparked many passions in me, such as my dream of becoming a lawyer, joining the competitive cheer team in high school, and becoming an advocate for the mental and physical health of Canadians. And yeah, she is a rock star. So it's like, like I just think she can accomplish anything, and already has begun, really.
Yeah.
But it's really exciting to see, that, and not everybody sort of needs help every year. Like if somebody lost their job or is going to school or those kinds of things, we're there to help as well. And we found that, for instance, during COVID, we had some of that where somebody was used to going to these lessons or these classes that they really valued, that were really making a big impact on their lives. And then life kind of happened and things got disrupted for a number of reasons. And so there've been families that have come to us for maybe like just one time, but we were able to sort of like keep that anchor point in place for that child, for instance. Yeah. And sometimes, we get, there's a group of siblings that are all learning instruments, like they're practicing together. Like it's just like the stuff that happens outside of the class as well is really, really cool to see. So, yeah.
That just kind of sparked a question I have is like, how many, and I don't know if you know the number, but like just generally, like how many applications would come in through a year, and or have you seen the uptake in the last couple of years go up at all? Because I'm just curious, right now groceries cost more than they ever have. We know that people are spending more on just the basic necessities, and I'm just curious if that's had an impact on how many applications you've seen as of, I guess, 2023 as we're talking.
Yeah. So it normally we are able to help about 1,200 to 1,500 kids in a year, generally speaking. We are usually asked for about 2,000 applicants, basically. And then money-wise, we're usually able to fund about 60% of what comes in for applications. It really depends. Things slowed down a bit during COVID. There were less activities to do, and that's kind of started to come back. And then I think you're right. The people are feeling the pressures a little more. And then we also have things like this past year, like a number of Ukrainian families recently from Ukraine because of the conflict there. And then a lot of them are kind of going to like Shawn, Ukrainian dance in Regina, for instance, and to kind of get that sense of community still, so it's like a big, so there's all that kind of stuff as well, which I think is also driving the number of people that are applying for sure. Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah. This past May, we had more applications than we normally have in May. We were able to fund about 300 kids, which was about 60%, which left us with a gap of about $95,000 that we weren't able to kind of fund those kids for. So there's always we always get more applications than we have the funds for sure.
Yeah, same here. I think it's true of the whole charitable sector, right? Is the reality is that the need is higher than the resources. But that's good to give kind of an idea of where you guys are looking at, and I guess the gap that's at least visibly needed to be filled right now.
Yeah.
One of the things that you mentioned, I just wanted to kind of touch on briefly, because you mentioned the word belonging before, and you talked about, the Ukrainian refugees coming, and it's nice that, like, as you say, like, through this, people that are really have just upended their whole lives and are looking for a place to belong, like little things like that. I guess there honestly can be big things, like realizing that, you came from the Ukraine and you have your culture to connect to here is huge for that sense of belonging. And I know we witness it all the time at our foundation, but those cultural connections are absolutely key to that feeling of belonging, and that feeling and that sense of belonging is what ultimately helps people become, safer, more successful adults as they grow.
Yeah, and we definitely, we see that with the Indigenous children as well. Now, like we definitely work with some that are like, languages, work in languages or regalia making or Indigenous beading, Métis dot art, like all that kind of stuff, where it's like just those, when, especially if you're young, or if you've, never quite been able to get a sense of your culture, there's a bit of that as well. But then if you know it and have been disconnected from it, there's all of that is like so important.
Yeah,
really.
And from an Indigenous kind of topic, I guess, too, and we've had some guests on from like Inclusion Regina talking about some of the programs they do specifically towards the Indigenous patrons they serve, and we had Laurie Campbell from the U of R. She's the Vice President of Indigenous Engagement, and like the topic that kept coming up with them really was just how important that connection to culture is. And from being in Canada, Indigenous people had their culture ripped away. So things like this, where you're able to really tangibly help them reconnect to their culture, if that's what they choose. That's also the nice thing, is that you're putting a bit of the power in the applicant's hands. But it's like those kids that are looking for that cultural connection and need a little push have that through an organization like yours. I think that's invaluable past the $700 or $750 that they would receive.
Yeah, I just want to shift gears just for a second and mention the foundations that you mentioned earlier. Like we are so thankful for their support. Like for instance, like Lauren and Evelyn Johnson Foundation, they've helped us a couple of times, and like I know the kids of Regina really appreciate their support. The Moffat Family Fund has been helping us since 2017. And I think probably about half of the children and youth that we're able to help in Moose Jaw are because of the Moffat Family Fund. G. Murray and Edna Forbes Foundation, they're relatively new to us, but they've been great to us too. And another one that's been with us since 2019 is Bill and Helen Davidson Foundation. They've been just consistent, and that is so great. And I know that like we get, as soon as we tell families the results, we get like emails back from them saying like, thank you, my son can continue guitar, or I really want to take this camp. And like, it's just like, we get that feedback as soon as they find out. So it's definitely really appreciated by us and by the applicants as well, for sure.
That's great. And even just to kind of use that as a little bit of maybe to kind of teach the audience a little bit about how some of the funds at SSCF work too. So you mentioned, for example, the Moffat Family Fund and Moose Jaw. So they're kind of an interesting fund, because the Moffat family, their fund is actually set up through the Winnipeg Foundation, and the Moffat family specifically gives to communities that they had either like lived in or were touched by, or who really helped them throughout their journey. And Moose Jaw is one of them. So our foundation administers the funds for Moose Jaw. But it's just really neat to see, like, I think sometimes donors are maybe thinking, how can I make the biggest impact, where I live? And no matter what community you're in, like, for example, like you mentioned, you guys are in 251 communities across Saskatchewan that you've given to. So that means that, if you're a donor looking to give back in your community and you care about the arts, or you care about the kids, or you care about mental health, or you care about all of those things, like that's a perfect reason to connect and either create a fund or donate directly to a place like Creative Kids and just make that impact. And as you mentioned, like in Moose Jaw, just since 2017, like that, that has a huge impact there. So I think that's one of the things that donors can keep in mind, that, if you're consistently funding something like this in the community that you're from, it's a really strong way to make a big impact with your dollars.
And we don't mind doing that too. Like if where we generally, or always basically, if donors live in, say Estevan, that's where the money, those are the kids that we're gonna support, right? With that donation.
Yeah.
And do you mind if I just mention a couple of kind of upcoming?
I wanted to ask kind of what you have on the go and maybe how people can get a hold of you.
Yeah. So in September, we have a fundraiser in Regina called Mexico Magico.
Yeah.
September 21st, and it is going to be held at Agave Restaurant.
Oh yeah.
And you can get tickets to it at the website creativekidssask.ca. And it'll be a really fun night. You'll come in, there's a mariachi band playing. Agave has great Mexican food.
Yeah.
That'll be part of it. We're gonna have some mystery envelopes that you can purchase, and you never know what's in them. Mm-hmm. Some of the prizes are quite big, and those are always fun. And then like a nice Mexican dessert and a salsa performance as well. So
nice.
It'll be super fun. And the other thing is that we have a 50-50, and again, tickets can be bought on the website.
Great.
Yeah. So.
Oh, that's fantastic.
And again, 100% of donations and sponsorships goes right to the kids' activities, which is always awesome.
Yeah, powering the arts, powering the future through kids, kind of powering what kids need to have a sense of community, belonging, purpose here in Saskatchewan. So it's really, really, really powerful. And I wanted to thank you a lot for coming on and sharing this. And I hope I'm sure the audience learned a ton. I know I learned a ton and I work with you guys every once in a while too. So I just wanted to say thanks a lot for coming on, and we really appreciate the work you do.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, no, I'm really happy to be here, Victor. Thank you.
Awesome. All right. Thanks for tuning in today. If you'd like to learn more about how you can get involved in your community and give back to your community, visit the South Sask Community Foundation online at sscf.ca or on our social media channels at Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, YouTube, or Spotify.
If you'd like to share your feedback on the program you just watched, contact us today.